Welcome back, everybody. Brand new Cabral Concept for you here today. Big show. I want to share with you, you may not have been told this by your PCP or your doctor, but there is actually an at-home lab test that you can do to see if you might have early signs of colon cancer. And I want to share with you why this is so important. But remember, this is a very inexpensive test that your PCP, your doctor can get you free of charge through your insurance, or an over-the-counter one that you can find at your local drugstore. I'm going to go through all of these here today, but why it's so important is that this is the third most common form of cancer and the second leading cause of cancer death when men and women are combined into those statistics, with 150,000 new cases per year just in the United States and 50,000 deaths per year. This is so important because it affects 1 in every 23 men and 1 in every 25 women, and it's growing each and every year for those under the age of 50, where typically a colonoscopy is recommended by 45 years old. I'm not saying you shouldn't do a colonoscopy. I have a whole podcast on that I'll link up here today at stephencabral.com/3723. But what I want to share with you is that it's so important to find colon cancer early because the 5+ year survival rate risk, if found early, is 90%, about a little over 90%, which is phenomenal. If it begins to spread but it's found well, the survival rate can still be 70%. Why this is so important is that colon cancer often grows slowly, but unfortunately, the symptoms are put off or not seen for many years. So this is why an at-home lab test, which is what, again, we're all about, whether it's Personomics, Equilife, or just going to your local drugstore, we're going to share that with you here today. Early detection is everything. That's what the future of health is really about: preventative medicine and early detection. That's why we talk about full body MRIs, blood work, the big 5 labs, et cetera, right? That's why this is so important. So, all right, let's dive right into it. Since it takes about 10 to 15 years to develop into cancer on average when there are polyps found in the colon, we're able to detect these things at an earlier stage, often considered stage 0 or stage 1. And the symptoms that you don't want to wait for but are important to look for are blood in the stool, a change in bowel habits, sometimes thinner stools, unexplained weight loss, or fatigue and or anemia, where iron levels continue to go down because it could be microscopic bleeding in the intestines. But that could be other things as well, but at least that's important. If you have a diet, these are risk factors. If you have a diet that's high in processed meat or like deli meats, red meat, it can be a cause for increased colon cancer. Again, I'm not talking negatively about red meat. I'm just saying we have to be careful for processed deli meats, especially bacon, etc. All right. Low fiber intake, less than 30 grams of fiber per day, obesity or sedentary, smoking or alcohol use, chronic inflammation, especially in the bowels due to candida overgrowth, SIBO, parasites, H. pylori, etc. And then, of course, a family history. All right, so let's dive right now into it. Everybody should be doing this regardless of symptoms or family history or diet, right? So like this is something I do myself and I teach the high performance health community. Early detection, again, is everything. Full body MRIs are amazing, but there are certain types of polyps in the intestines called sessile or sessile-based polyps that are flat. So think of a mushroom. So a polyp inside of your intestines would grow like a mushroom, right? It has a head on it. Think of it as a toadstool type mushroom. It grows up. Well, there are some mushrooms that also grow flat against a tree or flat against the ground. They're harder to detect at early stages on a full body MRI. So this is why colonoscopies every 10 years, beginning at 45 years old, is typically recommended. If anything is found, 1 or 2 polyps is oftentimes normal, benign, non-cancerous, then you're going to go every 3 to 5 years, but your doctor will give you that recommendation. Here's something that you can do on an annual basis. The first one, I'm going to give you 2 different lab tests. The second one is what we use in our high performance health community, but both are great. The first one is called the Cologuard. This is a multi-target stool DNA test. This is done through your doctor, meaning your PCP, or through telehealth, because you can get anything online, right? Like literally you could sign up for telehealth and just say, here's what I have going on. Here's why I want to do it. And If you're able to pay for it, you pay for it and you can get it. Sometimes it's covered by health insurance. It is typically covered by health insurance, especially if you're over the age of 45, you have a genetic predisposition, or maybe they found occult blood on a separate stool test. They're going to be able to typically cover it through health insurance or at least flex pay, HSA, FSA, et cetera. All right, so let's go over the accuracy with these. It detects cancer sensitivity 92% of the time, and it rules out disease 87% of the time. So pretty phenomenal, right? It's not a colonoscopy where they put a camera inside of your colon, right? It's not that, but are they able to detect things? Yes. Here are some of the downsides. They have a 13% false positive rate. What does that mean? Well, it means that you may have enlarged hemorrhoids or a fissure or some other type of bleeding that has nothing to do with polyps, but they found something, and 13% of those people, 1.3 out of 10, that were positive show a false positive. That's why you don't want to jump to the alarm stage if you get a positive. What you want to do if you get a positive is to have a colonoscopy. All right, so again, don't get overly alarmed. Just say, okay, this might be benign, it might be nothing, but I'm going to have a colonoscopy done. You'll bring it to your PCP. Okay, false negatives, 8% of the time. So 1 in 12 cancers are missed. That's an issue, but best we have right now, right? So 8% false negatives, which is why you still probably every 5 or 10 years want to do that colonoscopy. In high performance health, we typically do it every 5 years because our goal is to find things early. We're doing full body MRIs if we can on a yearly basis, non-radiation based, simply because the only reason you really wouldn't is if you're claustrophobic or it's the cost, right? So cost, of course, is associated with this. All right, so the second test, and I'm going to do a side-by-side profile in a moment. The second test is called the FIT test. I've been recommending this one now for about 5 or 6 years. It's called the Fecal Immunochemical Test, FIT. That's what it stands for. Okay, it's over the counter. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it anywhere you want, literally, excuse me, local drugstore, etc. It is sensitive to 70 to 74% for colorectal cancer, colon cancer, and about specificity, 95%. So very specific, catches a little bit less than the Cologuard. All right, only about 5% false positives, so much lower than Cologuard, meaning like, what is that, a 0.5 out of 10 instead of a 1.3 or so. Roughly 25 to 30% false negatives. So it can miss quite a few. Now, easy to do, easy to interpret, right over the counter, but even though it has high specificity, fewer false alarms, it can miss more cancers. All right, here's what I want to share too about the FIT-based test, and this might change your viewpoint. 3 out of 10 people will have colon cancer that it misses, okay? 20 to 40% will have advanced colon-based cancer. The rest, 50 to 70% that show a positive on this test may have hemorrhoids or the minor bleeding that I spoke about before. So FIT test can be great for someone that's typically had normal labs, lower symptoms, or maybe they know they have hemorrhoids, so if there's something there, they understand that, right? All right, let's give you the side-by-side. This is how I ultimately make my recommendations. When we're looking at sensitivity, Cologuard is 92%, and the FIT test is 74%, okay? Specificity, meaning how specific for colon-based cancer, the Cologuard is 87%. Why? Because it has that 13% false positive. The FIT test is 95%, all right? So it is dialed in more to a greater degree. The false positives we just spoke about, 5% for FIT, 13% for Cologuard. False negatives, 8% for Cologuard, 25 to 30% for the FIT test. Testing frequency with this test is typically every 3 years. Although it's inexpensive, you could do it yearly if you wanted to. One way to think about this is that if you are over 45, your doctor is most likely going to say, yeah, no problem, I'll get you a Cologuard test. Okay, so then you take that test, and then maybe after that, since the FIT test is just an inexpensive yearly test, you could take that on an annual basis. That's a lot of times that recommendations that we make, as long as you don't mind the testing. And once you reach, I talk about this in my new book, Personomics, but once you reach the high performance health level, your goal is you're good. You're healthy, you feel great, you want to keep that going. So these small little tests this test takes you 5 minutes to do, right? Those type of things for $39 or whatever it might cost you is usually worth it in the grand scheme of things when you're looking at, hey, I want to be able to catch something early when there's a 90+% chance that I'm going to survive, right? And I've told you before, heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. We can reverse those. We can take care of those. There's just no doubt about it because we find the underlying root cause. The wild cards are what? Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's can be found now decades in advance. So that's now off the table. So now there's only one of the leading causes of disease. That's it, and that's cancer. So that is the one that we do not have a direct answer for. That's it. Like literally one. That's it. So we need to do everything in our power to run the correct blood work that I've spoken about before, like the Grail or Gallery test. That's still the number one. The number one is the full body MRI. Then would be a Grail Gallery test. And then this colon cancer test on an annual basis that you can do right from home. And then every 5 to 10 years, you can do that colonoscopy. So hopefully this makes it much easier to understand. It's all laid out for you. I will link up, if I can, both labs at stevencabral.com/3723. The exact ones that we recommend in our practice. And then for colonoscopies, you can just speak with your local PCP. Or if you just want to run it on your own, there's so many centers that will just allow you to run it on your own. For example, I'm signing up with a local center near me without going through a PCP, and they're going to be able to run it, take my insurance, and that takes care of that. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, all the show notes and big takeaways will be at stevencabral.com/3723. Take care, everybody. Share the show with anyone you believe it can serve. Take care.